Greetings from Costa Rica and welcome to this special Saturday Costa Rica Matt broadcast. Today we're going to be going over a quick February 2026 Guanacaste real estate market update. Want to give you a general qualitative overview of how things are progressing as we go through the high season here in Guanacaste. We'll talk about buyer demand. We'll talk about a fire sale that is coming onto the market, or rather that's about to be reduced to that fire sale price range. We'll talk about transaction volume, share some insights from my colleagues, and as always, we'll try to empower you, my loyal audience, with information to help you make better decisions here in the Guanacaste real estate market. Of course, if you would like a full overview of the process of buying real estate, if you want a terrific video resource with more information about the basics of real estate in Costa Rica, you can subscribe to or visit CostaRicaMatt.com, hit the VBook button, and get my free video book, which is a compendium of over 20 videos with some of the most important real estate information I have available. And of course, if it's time for you to start considering real estate in the Guanacaste area from Playa Potrero down through Playa Junquial, including Flamingo, Grande, Tamarindo, Langosta, Avellanas, and Negra, do be sure to reach out and contact me. Be more than happy to assist you in any way that I can. Here is my contact on WhatsApp. You can hold up your phone and scan that QR code to just pull up my WhatsApp contact. And here is a QR code with more contact information, including my email address, phone numbers, etc. Let's start going over the February 2026 real estate market and what we are seeing on the ground here in Guanacaste. I want to send a big thank you to my colleagues in Jaco, David Carr, and up in Tamarindo, Dan Williams, who also contributed their thoughts to give a better overview of what's going on in the market. So first and foremost, let's talk about overall transaction volume and what we're seeing. And everyone's reporting that, yes, stuff is still happening. You're getting a solid transaction volume. In my office, we had a Hacienda Pinilla home close with my colleague Camille. I had a really beautiful home between Tamarindo and Langosta close. You're seeing plenty of real estate transactions happen as you would normally expect in January, which tends to be one of the highest months of our cyclical annual real estate season. Definitely have also seen plenty of closings in our competitors' brokerages as well. And so you are still seeing plenty of movement in the market. It's what I would call a pretty typical year when the economy is healthy, when the stock market is high, and when in general Costa Rica continues to be a very attractive destination for retirees, people relocating, etc. And of course, as I discussed in my predictions for 2026, we continue to see a lot of people who are motivated to look for an international relocation destination due to displeasure with their political situation at home. I have more and more conversations with people every day who cite politics and tension around that issue as one of the primary reasons they are considering moving to Costa Rica. Now, to give a bit of context before I go to my next point, remember that in 2020, Costa Rica closed its borders along with the rest of the world for about 9 months. And from 2021 through 2023, we saw an absolute frenzy. People really doing that sort of revenge travel, revenge relocation. A lot of people just bought properties down here because of that giant stress around COVID. And you saw an absolute, again, frenzy. People buying things at ever, escalating prices and really just trying to get into Costa Rica at any cost. Now, as we're moving into February this year, there are definite signs that post-COVID inventory creation and that pricing increases that we saw in those 3 years have definitely overshot demand. And I think that that applies both to the rental market and to the sales, because you're certainly seeing right now that rental properties all over Guanacaste are struggling to show any ROI. I would bet you that we're going to have very similar tourism numbers in 2026 to those that we saw in 25 and 24. And in the meantime, you've also seen the creation of a huge amount of inventory. People building homes, new developments springing up everywhere, a lot of condo projects that finally were restarted after COVID. Essentially, you saw a lot of developers who witnessed the post-COVID rush, created inventory, and are now putting up their for sale sign, unfortunately, at a moment when the market is slowing down, or rather, we're just seeing the same demand as previous years, but a far greater amount of inventory. You're also seeing that a lot of those folks who bought in the post-COVID rush, for many typical reasons, a few years later, they are now selling their property, and those homes coming back on the market following that burst of buying are creating a lot of units for sale. In Tamarindo specifically, you see a ton of condos in the lower price ranges that are on the market. You've definitely seen a ton of the sort of $1.5 million to $2 million homes in Hacienda Pinilla, a luxury community, be listed and end up sitting on the market. And really, you're seeing that a lot of those stubborn sellers who won't lower their prices are seeing their properties sit on the market for long listing periods. And I can say, my sellers are not immune to this. A lot of sellers in Costa Rica own their properties outright in cash. And because there is a low property tax structure, because you've got a lot of properties that at least rent some of the year, they're not costing their owners much money to keep them. And so you see sellers stubbornly sitting on the same prices. And right now, a lot of those prices were set based on what we were seeing in 22 and 23 when things were absolutely booming. So you've finally seen pullback from buyers who are no longer willing to pay those elevated prices. And yes, listings are starting to sit on the market. And really, you're really starting to see a lot of sellers either have to adjust their price, like the fire sale that we're going to see at the end of the episode here, or really you're seeing people switch brokerages, try different marketing strategies, all kinds of things to try and move their property. But by and large, you often see that they're not willing to lower their price to where they might really motivate someone to jump out of their seat and buy the property. Again, although you're seeing some lenders offer loans here, those loans typically start above 8% interest. And so this still largely remains a cash market for foreign investors, which means that, yeah, it has to be an extremely attractive price for people to jump out of their seat and buy something quickly. Another trend that we're seeing in February, or as we go into 2026, is really that this is a continuation of something we've seen over the last couple of years, that buyers tend to look for turnkey properties. We're also seeing they just really don't want to build homes in Costa Rica as much as they used to have appetite for doing so. Now, there are some exceptions to this. I do see that in luxury gated communities, people with those really large budgets are still buying undeveloped lots because they have, I think, less fear of ending up in a bad situation with contractors. They've got a bigger financial cushion to make sure that their construction goes well. And those are the people who want their own perfect home in paradise, rather than buying somebody else's home where they have to sort of adapt their priorities and just find a home that's on the market. So you do still see those gated community lots being sold, but in general, it does seem that over the last 3 or 4 years, people have shifted away from buying those undeveloped parcels in other areas and are really continuing to move towards finding turnkey properties. And part of that is really that, this post-COVID shift in buying in Costa Rica has really featured more people who are relocating or at least planning on spending serious time down here in Costa Rica every year, and fewer people who are really just looking for that occasional vacation property that they're going to use for 2, 4, or 6 weeks per year. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with COVID. People wanted to get out of wherever they were because they were driven crazy by the political situation, the restrictions, all of that. But also, with the continued trend towards remote work and people just feeling freedom in general to sort of move abroad, we're seeing more relocation than we did in the past. And so buyer demand has continued to shift away from those investment properties. My colleague Dan in Tamarindo mentioned he's seeing a lot more people buy in because they actually love the community and it's somewhere they want to spend a lot of time, and far fewer people who are coming with that profit-minded opportunism, which is, in the long run, great for the community. You get people who are actually interested in investing in the community, in spending real quality time there, rather than people who are just immediately putting their property on the rental market and diluting that rental demand even further. Wrapping up here, I do want to talk about 2 properties. One is a really great deal. I hesitate to call it a fire sale, but it's definitely a solid deal. And the second is a legitimate fire sale where I do feel that you should see a very quick sale at the price that they're going to. I wanted to quickly mention, I had brought up a fire sale beachfront condo on my channel, I think about 3 weeks ago or a month. And I wanted to mention that that fire sale condo was under contract within a week because that price was so attractive. There were people actually staying at the complex at that moment who saw the unit, saw the price, and immediately moved on it. So when I say fire sale, I really try to reserve that term for properties that I think should sell within a few weeks of the price being announced and going to that number. I don't just throw it out there to try and get people really interested, because you do see that it can be an abused term where, for example, people will have a very overpriced home. They do a significant reduction and call it a fire sale. But really, even with that significant reduction, they're still not in the ballpark of what you could legitimately call a fire sale, something that should just really get people to make quick offers. And instead, they're just using the fact that that property went down maybe 15, 20, 25% in price as the justification for calling it a fire sale. Very interesting question that I got. I do appreciate it, from viewer Lig2040. How would the new president influence Costa Rica real estate? That's a very complex question that I am not prepared to answer in this podcast. I will mention that the president won a legislative majority for the first time in 30 years. That's something that's going to very much change the dynamic of Costa Rica politics, where a lot of people would say that clearly there was a lot of inertia and problems getting anything significant passed when the president was from one party and there was no legislative majority in the unicameral legislature here. Now that one party controls both the presidency and I believe it was like 30 seats among the 57 seats in the legislature. The big shift that's definitely going to happen is that dynamic of having a majority and being able to pass things. And I'm not going to express my opinion on their agenda or what might happen. I will just say, however, that that is a pretty big shift in how things are going to be going forward. They did not win a big enough majority to change the Constitution, which they had, the party that won had sort of thrown out ideas about changing the Constitution, which now, unless they get other parties on board with those ideas, which I would guess is unlikely, you're only going to see basic laws passed and not fundamental changes to Costa Rica. Let's get on and talk about this great deal that I want to bring up first. And I hope I'm not offending the owner of this property and not calling it an absolute fire sale. But my colleague Camille just listed a home at $399,000. This is a brand new 3-bedroom home with a pool. It's a 1,300 square foot home that really is as close to the beach as you can get without entering that lease zone, the maritime zone itself. It has an awesome location just to the south of Playa Avellanas. You could walk down to the beach and then to Avellanas from this home in like 15, 20 minutes. It's an absolutely prime location above and beyond all else. And here's one of the big, right now they just started paving the road that goes past this property, which would fundamentally change the area if they continue to get all the way through. Here you're looking at the road that goes north towards Avellanas. It passes past Hacienda Pinilla and comes out, on the highway to Tamarindo. If they actually get pavement all the way to this home, then I would absolutely be calling this just a crazy fire sale at the price. As we are, again, I really feel this is just a solid price that should result in an efficient sale of that property. At $399,000, you're getting a 1/4 acre of property, a 3-bedroom brand new home, a really nice pool with a water feature. And again, you're like 1,000 feet walking distance from Playa Lagartillo, which is just a beautiful undiscovered spot where you really don't see anybody else often, or you actually never see tourists. So let's get to our fire sale here. I know you've all been anxious to see. Here we go with Casa Colina. Casa Colina is actually not even a listing in my brokerage. The owner is somebody I played tennis with. Shout out to Steve, who, along with me, was a very graceful loser in 5 out of 6 of our doubles matches on Friday. He had mentioned to me directly, hey, we're going to take our price way down on the house. We just want to fire sale it. And I said, wow, Steve, at your price, I do want to just help you get exposure for the house, help you try and find a buyer because they are ready to move out of Costa Rica and divest from this property. So first of all, here's Casa Colina. You've got lovely views from it. It's a fairly new house. They built it in 2020. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home with that nice pool. They've got a little bit of lawn space around the pool itself, plenty of cleared area around the home. If I'm not mistaken, it's full concrete construction, so a really solid home overall. You can see they've got it just completely ready to move in. It's not a fixer-upper or anything. I'll get to there are a couple of things that I would just immediately disclose to anybody about this property. Liabilities that are easily addressed, and for the primary reasons they haven't been able to sell it. However, Steve has lowered his price on this property to $309,000, which for me, absolutely puts this in a fire sale range. At $309,000, we're talking about a price point that you really just don't see for turnkey homes in this kind of area. And with that, so here are the really nice views off the porch. This is kind of where I dream of living. They have a 2-acre plus property, so it's a very spacious lot. It's in a community called Rancho Cartagena, which is not a gated community with security and HOA fees and a ton of rules, but it is a private community with a number of other homes that have been built inside. Overall, the location is very solid because it puts you at like a 15 to 20 minute driving distance from some of the area's most important private schools. And that's why I really think you're going to see someone go after this home at $309,000. I'm going to bring up the location of Rancho Cartagena here on the map. So essentially, if you're looking at the coastline, Playa Flamingo's up here. The critical intersection known as Huacas is right here. Playa Grande and Tamarindo are out here. And Rancho Cartagena is just a short drive up this beautifully paved highway in this direction. To me, paved road access is always a huge factor. I believe this is Rancho Cartagena. If it's not, it's right in this area. But that's got to be it. So you're like a 15-minute drive out to La Paz and Cria up in this area. You're really an even shorter, maybe 10 or 15-minute drive to the schools over here like Journey, Flourish, Educarte. So at $309,000. And actually, I hadn't brought the screen on. My apologies. I wasn't showing the map the whole time, but thought I was. So again, you're looking at Playa Flamingo, Playa Tamarindo. Really, this is the heart of the foreigner expat development here in Guanacaste's coast, because you've got La Paz and Cria, two of the biggest private schools in the area up there. You've got a number of other private schools in between Villarreal and Huacas here. Tamarindo is out here, and Rancho Cartagena is right here, just a 15, 20-minute drive from all of that. And it's absolutely critical for our recent audience that access to schools, because we've had so many families moving down to the area. Really being able to get out to those schools quickly and efficiently is a central pillar of what's driven pricing through the roof. So again, you have over 2 acres, a turnkey move-in ready home up there in Rancho Cartagena, just a 15-minute drive from everything along the coast, now at $309,000. Again, we've seen everything at that price point get vacuumed up here in the post-pandemic market. If you want to know more about that property or anything else we've seen on my show, don't hesitate to send me an email. You can reach me at matt@costaricamatt.com. Here's my V card where you can get all of my contact info. Thanks very much for watching, folks, today on this Saturday, February 7th broadcast. See you next week. If I'm not playing too much tennis, I will try to get back on Friday for our typical live time at noon. Thanks again.